Here to talk after this week of getting excited about tools and shiny objects and AI, while always warning about strategy coming first. We're back to talking strategy and adoption with Mr. Tony Dowling. How you doing, man?
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm cold. It's not Texas weather here in the UK at the minute. Autumn has hit, and we're wet and cold. But apart from that, it's great. Yeah, all great. As you said, lots coming out of HubSpot land over the last week or so. Really exciting, especially if you're a HubSpot geek, HubSpot fanboy like we are, or fangirl, or fan person. But it always makes me think. What about that poor first time user or first time admin or person going through onboarding? There's even more to get your head around, even more to learn, or perhaps what I would be afraid of in these cases is even more intimidating. The platform is more intimidating the more you see of this stuff. And of course, I think one of the things I learned about strategy was that it needs to be really simple. I have two major influences. I've more than two, but two major influences on my strategy thinking are both military. One of them is an English. He's passed away now, actually, but an English major general, a three-star general. I think you guys would describe him as, that I was lucky enough to work with for a number of years. And he advocated for a strategy on a page. He called it a soap. He thought any strategy that was longer than a page wasn't worth having. And there's also an American officer and a Navy SEAL. You've probably heard of him. I'm sure he's quite famous. Jocko Willink, who wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. And he also talked about how important it is that a strategy is simple and not necessarily uncomplicated, but simple, as in simple to understand, simple to follow, and then easy to execute. And I think we are very guilty of being enthusiastic about the tech. I get carried away with the possibilities sometimes, and then when you see this stuff, this content that's being pumped out of inbound, it's it's almost like it almost obfuscates. It almost makes the message so complicated that the platform becomes, say, intimidating. So I thought it'd be cool to talk today about how you make strategy simple. I think there's a my final point before I let you back in on this, Chris. I think there are people out there who need to make it more complicated than it is. Dare I say it, to justify whatever rates they're charging their clients. And they make RevOps complex, and they make marketing strategy complex, and business strategy complex. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Maybe to make it thorough and so on and so on. But simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I say that's where I'd like to kick us off in today's chat.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're right. This is why I like to differentiate between complex and complicated. Like,
Mm,
uh, we need to do this understanding that we're building out complex systems to support complex processes that support complex human behavior, right? And that's different from complicated in that it's hard to understand. It's You're adding in steps, that don't need to be there. You're explaining things that maybe confuse people or misdirect or distract. Uh, and I should listen to Extreme Ownership as far as the book. When it was, I think when it was coming out, or when I first knew about it, I could only read so many. I could only listen to so many books that show me a future or show me a reality that is not achievable wherever I am at that moment. And when it came to accountability and creating a system of accountabilities and relying on each other, when the organizational culture is not that,
mm,
like it just gets frustrating. Like you get more and more information that you can't implement. And back then, I was trying to use HubSpot as a tool, much in the way that you talk about. This is why it doesn't work.
Mm,
When I try to use HubSpot as a tool that forces transparency, because you couldn't permission it back then. If the email is in there, everybody's going to see it, right? And that helped to some extent, but eventually people got pissed off, and it caused other problems because that just didn't match with the culture. It didn't There's no strategic. Nobody wanted accountability
mm,
necessarily,
mm.
right?
No,
So when you try to
100%.
create it and understand it, like it just doesn't work. And that's where I think that was a great indicator of this is why, like, no matter how shiny these objects are, no matter how excited you get, like, if you don't solve for this part first, where everybody's understanding of how do we use HubSpot for our business to be successful, and then how do we each use it individually to support that journey, like nobody's adopting it, we're not having success with it, and there's no other way around it,
Mm.
honestly.
It's such a great point, and they do say culture eats strategy for breakfast. Uh, and I'm not entirely sure, but the book, just to touch on that again, I think a UK audience, by the way, I would highly recommend this book, but for a UK audience, is very alpha male, it's very American, rah rah rah. But if you can manage to read past that bit where the bullets are flying, and people are going, yeah, I bench press 250 pounds and all this kind of thing. There's this incredible strategy book. But funny you should say, because culture is so clearly at the heart of what those SEAL teams, any military team, any elite team, um, it's about the alignment. It's about the desire to do the job. It's about the desire do the job at the expense of everything else, and that would be personal rivalries, that would be petty politics, that would be office politics type stuff. So that's absolutely one of the points. You make such a good point. I couldn't think off the top of my head of an organization that doesn't panic when they first find that HubSpot, apart from sales organizations, that doesn't panic when they first find HubSpot is logging emails. What, all emails? What, my emails? And you have to spend so much time explaining how to not log emails if you don't want to log emails. And I mean, to the point where literally many management teams, this is one of the reasons why they opt out of HubSpot completely, because they obviously don't want their lunch orders and messages to their wife and anybody else to, to be public knowledge, and it's another one of the things that destroys adoption. Anything that is do what I say, not do what I do, is problematic. And again, if there is a main issue with adoption, it's management, as in management not adopting, management not having ownership, or perhaps more accurately, management not building that strategy in. So it's great for me to sit here and go, yeah, strategy should be simple, and but you make a fantastic point. If the culture of the organization is not right, then no matter what the strategy is, it's not going to work. The two are really hand in hand. They really, and it's almost impossible to separate them. So that's a really good point. And how do you get good culture? In the same way you get good strategy. I mean, they're almost interchangeable. Transparency, alignment, truthfulness, fairness, um, accountability, but also recognition. All of these things are so important on both sides of that coin, on whether it's the strategy or the cultural coin.
So at this point, we're making some assumptions that the culture is halfway decent,
Yes.
and the team, the business is somewhat aligned on where we are right now and where we need to go. Now, how do we, like, chart that path,
Nice.
basically using HubSpot
Yeah.
to get there?
Okay. So never has this question been put so clearly, right? So that's a great question. So let's not assume first of all, because if we assume, we make an ass of you and me, as I'm sure you know. Let's not assume we're all in the same place, and let's make it our first step that an alignment exercise, right? Now, I'd like to start with, where do we want to go with an organization? Because you would be amazed, especially after a few years of working together, how teams, Chinese whispers, how teams develop objectives that aren't core or key to an overall strategic vision, right? So it's really important that everybody sits down and agrees this is where we all want to go, because it often isn't the case. Then we look at, where are we now? And it's quite often that people, I think, start with the where are we now, which gets really complicated. Because before you know it, there's people like rolling around on the floor, pulling each other's hair and throwing cups of tea at each other and shouting and blaming things. So we start with, where are we going, guys? Are we all going to the same place? Do we all believe in the mission? Do we all want to get there? Great, fantastic. Okay, great. So let's have a look at where we are now. And then the strategy, in its simplest term, is, how do we get there? How do we go from where we are to, now that we know where we want to go, to where we want to go? And I like to use a tool to start this exercise called the old-fashioned SWOT analysis. I'm sure you'll have heard the term. Everybody uses the term. It's often derided, but it's a really powerful strategic tool, mainly for the reason that it looks at both, where do we want to go, and where are we now at the same time. So the SW of the SWOT, strengths and weaknesses, if you've not come across the term before, it's that SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we usually see it in a 2x2 matrix. Like everything else in business, it's in a 2x2 matrix. And in one square, we have strengths. In another, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, when it comes to these strengths and weaknesses, it's useful to consider that in terms of the internal organization. Or perhaps, if you like, where are we now? What are we good at? Where are we weak? What could we use to strengthen? What do we do too much of, even? And what usually happens is teams are really good at listing strengths. They get to about 20 before they start repeating themselves, and they're really bad at listing weaknesses. They get to about 5 before they run out of puff. It's not
Well,
necessarily it's not a
until you
bad
talk
thing.
to sales and
Yeah, until you still, yeah,
you're
absolutely.
mentioning weaknesses on every other team in the organization.
Yeah. No, see, now there's that cultural thing, right? That's the cultural thing. And that's why it's really important that this is a multidisciplinary exercise, although it does need to be very well managed. And then when you flip to the OT, the opportunities and the threats, now we're looking at the future. Now we want to look at, what is it we'd like to do? What opportunities are there for us to take advantage of? And clearly, what do we need to be mindful of? What's coming down the pipe? For me, as a CRM company, we are keeping a very close eye on AI, because it's obviously a massive opportunity for us and for our clients, but also a huge threat, because it's going to change the way CRM works today. AI is the future, and it's going to make it easier to access the power of the CRM. That means the way we currently do it, and I don't mean HubSpot, I mean those of us in the CRM world, it's going to change the way that we work. It's going to change the way we interact with our clients. And you can see, arguably, the requirement for a completely new service from us, because the setting up and training service may just disappear. We may not need to do that anymore, because you may be able to talk in natural language to your CRM and just get what you need out of it without having to worry about workflows and pie charts and pipe drives and pipelines and all these kinds of different things. So that's a brilliant example of looking forward with opportunities and threats. Um, there's a few more, but let's take a breath there. Repeat back to me, Chris. Does that make sense? Is that what you understand a SWOT analysis as?
Yeah, I'm just very interested to see one that actually has an impact,
Right,
right?
right.
And is actionable. And that's right. I think
Beautiful.
at its simplest, even if, even though I took a shot, at the sales team, where it's a fair shot, because if you're starting anywhere, it should be there, because it's as simple as, like, strengths, why do we win? Weaknesses, why do we lose? opportunities generally relate to like, okay, how do we stop losing, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
it's product, sometimes it's process.
Yep.
Um, and then threats, you know, like what strengths do we have that might not be strengths, for very long?
Yep. Yep.
Or what
What
if
are
we
going to
don't take
change? And
advantage of those opportunities?
that's why
Things like that.
we often look at the SLEP acronym, or PEST. You might be familiar with. We look at political, economic, sociological, technological, and often legal changes to the environment, changes to the horizon, if you like. Things that are
Right.
coming down the pipe at us, that allows us to frame the opportunities and the threats. Just
Yeah.
as I like to frame our strengths and weaknesses under the marketing mix. So, talking about sales, I would usually apply people, product, place, price, and promotion. Five P's. Five P's are my favorite P's. I don't mind four, and I don't usually go as far as the 27P extended service marketing mix, but five is the key number I like. So I want to look at the five P's. I want to look at strengths and weaknesses through that. That would include your sales team, but it also includes your marketing. It includes the product itself, the product development, includes your communications, includes your pricing strategy, includes how you're going to get it to the marketplace, and all those kinds of things. This is really important. But you asked a really great question. So what happens? You get a list of strengths, a list of weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and everybody goes, that was great. Well done, everybody. As a good day's work. Thank you very much. We'll come back to that in a year and see if anything's changed, right? So the missing piece. If you overlay a bullseye on that 2x2 matrix, right? If you whack like a target, the round rolls of a target, okay, over that 2x2 matrix. And in each quadrant that you've now created, so in the strengths quadrant, the most important strength is nearest to the bullseye, and the least important strength is furthest away from the bullseye, right? So this starts the process of prioritization of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Until you get to around the bullseye, you get down to, depending on how many you've got, some people immediately get down to one in each quadrant, some people two or three in each quadrant, right? Once we've narrowed it down to whatever, less than 10, my job as a leader is to narrow that down to one in each. And I call that one in each the key business issue. So I want four, perhaps five, depending on what's going on, four or five key business issues that are then going to inform the strategy. Or put another way, the strategy addresses those four key business issues. So that's why I like the SWOT so much, because not only does it throw a load of mud at the wall, not mud, and to see what sticks, but it allows us to prioritize down to the point where we actually go, okay, so we have this strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. How are we going to maximize the strength, mitigate the weakness, take advantage of the opportunity, and make sure that the threat's not going to undo us? Those are our four strategic operations for this next 12, 36, 72 months. And that's when strategy becomes real in your business, right? And that's when strategy is simple, because you go, right, well, we've got a great sales team, just to get you back for that sales digger, right? We've got a great sales team. We've got all these people. How do we get more out of the sales team? So the key business issue is, how do we get more from sales? We've got a fantastically strong sales team. We feel like they could be doing more money. We feel like they could get into a new market. We feel like we could sell different products, whatever it's going to be. That's the strategy. And then you've got at most four themes running through the business, four strategic themes running through the business. And then we take HubSpot as the tool. And this is the bit, this is the magic bit, right? It's not any more complicated than that. We measure the impact of those themes using HubSpot. That allows us to create, we go from something we call a management information system, an MIS, right? Management information system, where we've got all of the measures, right? We strip them back to our key business issues, as we've said. Once we know what our key business issues or our key themes are, we strip the measures back to our management control system. So which are the key measures? And there may only be four. There's more likely probably be 8 to 12. There may be 2 or 3 measures for each one, but only 2 or 3 measures. Because as the leader, I only want to see 2 or 3 measures to make sure that the 4 strategy themes that we've decided on are going in the right direction. And if they're not, we can dive deep. It's a control system. It allows us to see how the plans are progressing. Okay, so we go from the chaos of a full CRM system with all the information that comes out of it, the chaos of an organization where everybody's working against each other in a friction full environment with very little strategic imperative, to an organization that's 3 or 4, maybe 5 themes, aims that it works to at any one time. That's it. 3, 4, 5, that's the optimum. With a management information system, that's paired back to an MCS, a management control system. Management control system being allow me to easily see on a rag, on a red, amber, green basis, which numbers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which ones aren't. And that allows us, as a leader, that allows me to dive in and to correct the strategy. That's how HubSpot, this is what I mean when I say build your strategy into HubSpot. That's what I mean when I talk about strategy, HubSpot controlling the business's strategy. If you don't do all of that work to get down to 2, 3, 4 key themes, key strategic themes, you've just got information left, right, and center. And that's what results in RevOps madness. When you require an analyst to look at your data to tell you what's going on. I kind of get it, right? But I think to myself, if I was a leader of a business and I had to hire somebody to tell me what was going on in my business, I'm in trouble. I'm
Yeah.
really in trouble. Okay.
No,
Now I don't mean necessarily hire somebody to help me see what my key business issues are. That makes sense. But having to hire somebody, a RevOps specialist, to actually tell me what's going on and what I need to do, that is a bad sign, I think.
yeah, that's a sign of a complicated system. Like if the people that are in charge of the things need help understanding what's happening with those things, then that's you working for the system instead of the system working for you.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to leverage AI will be able to surface all of that like much faster with the insights.
Yeah.
Once
We
you
could just
set
ask
up
the question.
that,
Yeah, we could just
right?
ask the question. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And but that last level that you mentioned is usually a miss too. Like you can set up all the green red indicators you want, but if the team hasn't agreed on what to do when they see those colors, then it's just another way of like, okay, we see their colors, but we're not going to do anything about them. Um, and once you line it up, I mean, so much of this is prioritization, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love the way you described the distillation of, okay, where to go from SWOT and then down. Like, there's so many different ways you can list like what needs to be done for a business, but taking that step towards prioritization. And I think that what you described is, I kind of like it because I always have an issue with focus, the focus that is suggested that is needed, the 3 to 5 things that we're supposed to be working on. But when you're in it every day, you know that there's just so many more things that come to mind. Like if you don't know that those things are that we are aware of those other things, and we could maybe bring them in as the temperature changes on those things, like it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to,
100%.
you know, also miss opportunities if you completely like,
Yeah.
get rid of those. So
Yeah. And
that's where I
this is,
think the regular review of this stuff is still important, but without this intention,
yeah,
that's what you get to the weekly and monthly sessions where you go over this stuff constantly, and just everybody hates it because nothing's actually getting done
nothing ever gets
in
done.
those meetings,
You,
right?
excuse me, we have the corporate memory of a goldfish, in that we keep solving the same problems over and over again. The same problems keep presenting themselves over and over again. So this is an example of where the management structure, the relationship between the units within the business is so important. Um, there's a thing I call, I'm not the only person to talk about it by any stretch, but it's called the management trap, right? The management trap is it's easier and quicker if I do it myself, right? We've all been guilty of it. I'm still guilty of it now in my small team. It's easier and quicker if I do it myself, right? That's why everything gets cluttered. Everything begins to unwind, because your leader, now whether at whatever level that leader is, whether that's at a team level or an executive level or at a senior level, your leader becomes the bottleneck of all decision making. So if you delegate something like we've just talked about, right? We've got 4 strategic themes. I've got 4 directors in the business, let's say. Each of those directors is responsible for that one theme. Within that director's team, there will be managers who are responsible for the component pieces of that one theme. Within that manager's team, there will be operators who will be responsible for delivering against the component pieces of that one team. And as soon as everything starts to bottleneck, everything starts to back up behind the one decision that we're waiting to make, everything falls apart. That's why the leadership is so important. The leadership stays above in the strategic layer. The managers stay in the management layer, and the operators feed back and forth between their own and the management layer for sure. Otherwise, you don't have any communication. But leadership needs to remain disciplined to stay on task. Because if leadership doesn't stay on task, management won't stay on task. If management doesn't stay on task, operators won't stay on task. It's as simple as that. And that's why a good manager will find a way of managing, and a good leader will find a way of managing their managers. A good manager will find a way of managing with 1 or 2 measures. So let me tell you a story. I worked out when I was a sales manager, I was a much better sales manager than I was a salesperson. But when I was a sales manager, I realized there was one activity, and I'm going to get slaughtered for this. There's one activity that was more important than any other activity in my sales team, and that was the number of presentations that got made. Right now, I've had this fight, everybody, for 30 years. So if you're going to come at me on this, be prepared. I have thought this through. I have evidence. Okay, I'm not saying that everything else in the process is unimportant. I'm saying the most important piece is the number of presentations a salesperson makes. On the basis that a salesperson has to go through their sales process in order to make presentations, on the basis of all things being equal, right? Yes, I know 10 shit presentations will result in 0 sales, and 2 great presentations will result in 2 sales. Yeah, these are outliers, okay? When you are managing multiple salespeople in multiple markets, multiple business units over multiple years, edge cases are of no use to you whatsoever, right? So the only thing I'm looking at as a sales leader is the number of presentations my team is making. Because when that number falls below the number that we've worked out we need to achieve, we jump in. It's called management control. We jump in and we go to a rep, for instance, or we go to a team and we say, "Hey, your numbers are a bit low. What's going on?" Ah, well, do you know this happened? Somebody's been sick. The client went pop. Um, a competitor launched a massive campaign against us. Whatever it's going to take, right? We only need to know that big indicator, the key performance indicator, the one measure, which for sales, for me, it was always the number of presentations. Didn't mean I didn't know what was going on. Didn't know I didn't know the temperature. Didn't mean I didn't know what was in the pipeline. It was just that that was the message I looked at. That kept this clear to do all the other things, because I wasn't looking at 15 different measures. And I think that's what we're talking about here. The difference between the discipline to be able to do that and not be overwhelmed by everything else that's going on, by all these other fires that other people should be putting out. In other words, it may be quicker and easier for you to do it yourself, but it's going to destroy your business if you work that way. People have to be
Yeah.
allowed to fail. People have to be allowed to learn. People have to know what their remit is. You can delegate authority to people to do things, but you can't delegate responsibility for those things. But do delegate the authority. It's the whole point. It's the whole point. And again, in businesses where that doesn't happen, where the leadership becomes the block, we see HubSpot unraveling. We see adoption falling apart.
Yeah. And I think, like, just from experience, I was always the frustration is usually it's the other way around. You get delegated the responsibility. And what
And not
that
the
becomes,
authority,
right?
100%.
And that's like every marketer's like reality, in terms of like just all these metrics that, especially as the ones who clamor and want just some connection to revenue, like there's so much of the process that's out of marketing's control, and it's just very easy to get distracted and create a lot of friction in the organization. And I like that what you highlighted is like key process indicators aren't very key if you have 15 or 20 of them.
Just like priorities and priorities if you have more than one. You
Right.
cannot have more than one priority. It's in the name.
Yeah. And and like, so if you're the sales leader and that's your KPI, and the business leader, somebody owns revenue number somewhere, right? You're matching, you're always looking at it against that, and the so you're checking like, steady, less or more, right? And that should relate to revenue almost directly, so
Yeah,
that
of course it does.
you could you could see less, but then the revenue doesn't change. You still want to understand like why that's happening, or
Exactly.
you could see more and then also see revenue doesn't change. You're like, okay, we thought an increase in presentations at this point was going to be good. It's not. So what has changed, or what do we need to change to make that number like have an impact?
That's
Um,
exactly right, Chris. It's
right.
it's like a canary in a coal mine, right? You're walking down, you're walking through the coal mine with your canary, your number of presentations held out in front of you. If that canary keels over, you know there's something wrong. You may not know what it is, but you know there's something wrong. And say this is the basis of planning and control. We set ourselves a plan, but we have to control the plan. And what you were saying earlier is people are great at planning, they're less good at control. That's what base and this is where the HubSpot adoption issue is. Even if people have a plan, they don't bake it into HubSpot so that it can act as a control, as a management control system, as we call it. And I often think this is the difference between big businesses and small businesses. Big businesses are able, through whatever means, and it's probably because of resource as much as anything else, but they're much better able to focus on simple things. Big businesses are much more straightforward than small businesses. For you and me as a small business owner, we got so much on I have way more on my plate now than when I was running a business of 200 people. It's insane. It's crazy how much stuff we have to get through. So I'm not either. Am I saying that this is an easy process? I'm just saying it is the process. And that's why you want to work with somebody like you or like me to help teach you this stuff, to help show you this stuff, because you're probably really good at selling or marketing or making something, or you're probably a brilliant functional specialist. You're not necessarily an experienced leader or a HubSpot coach, or whatever it is you need to be. You have to get this resource in to support you to be able to do these things. You can't do it on your own. At least I don't think you can.
Yeah. No, it's the same. Whatever core process like made you successful, usually either sales or product,
Yeah,
um, you've already built in like KPIs, whether they're documented or not, where if this thing doesn't happen, I'm not closing the deal, or the product is not going to be of quality, like, and I'm not going to be able to sell it, or if I try to sell it, customers aren't going to be happy, it's going to break, whatever. Now we're just applying that kind of like in this environment, like the whole business needs to connect together like that. And that's where asking for help from others, this is why you hire other people, whether it's inside or outside of the business, because it's not your expertise, and it shouldn't be. You're really good at other things, right? And it's okay to get help with the things that you're not good at. That's actually the best like investment you're going to make, because now everybody's in a great position to win.
efficiency and effectiveness in business is about removing bottlenecks. When you're the bottleneck, you have trouble. And keep it simple, stupid, right? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You don't know how to do a thing, don't bother to learn it. Get somebody in, because you need to be up here. You need that 20,000 foot view. You need to be looking at the three horizons. You need to be looking at what's going on in the teams. You need to be tending the culture. You need to be controlling those key performance indicators, the 4 or 5 performance indicators that you decided on. Those are that's your job. That's your job. It's not your job to deep dive down to the pit and put out the fire. You know, enable the teams to put out the fire, put processes in place they can follow to put out the fire, but let them put out the fire themselves. You know, that there are people who do these things, right? Why would you do it? And if you're in a business and you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, well, it's all very well, but it's only me. What that means is you're doing too much. You're doing too much stuff. You're doing too much. You're trying everything and nothing is working. And again, you're not prioritizing. And probably the reason for that, having gone through it myself, is because you don't know what does work, right? So again, hire Chris, hire me. We've been through this stuff. We know what works and what doesn't work. Get some idea. Don't have to be us, right? Other coaches are available.
There's lots of
Anybody,
support out there. That's what's crazy.
lots of
Like
support.
that's
Anybody
why I
within that.
say the the decision to do this is the hardest part. Like the tools, the support is out there if you want to make these changes,
Yeah,
right? You have to want to make them though. Nobody's going to do it for you. And I think to the analogy you just made, like you can't be the one fixing all the stuff, but you have to be aware of the fires and the pits and like where they're impacting your business, which gets us back to this control system. Like
yeah,
you can't delegate that part of HubSpot, right? Which everybody tries to do.
exactly.
We'll do all of the things and then magically we're just going to export all the data and create our own slides and create our own story, which totally misses, then you stop connecting things and you
Yeah,
can't literally cannot make decisions based on what is happening inside of HubSpot, which means HubSpot is less valuable for the
yeah.
business and then people don't use it.
If you are not using HubSpot to measure the 2 or 3 things that you need to measure, then you are not managing. Because if it's not measured, it's not managed. If you're not managing, then things aren't going to get done. And that's why your business is chaotic. That's why it feels like it's freewheeling and spiraling out of control. Because it is 100%.
Lucky for you, you have one of the best platforms ever created to do it affordably and effectively. And that's all we're trying to do here is help you, get better, grow better. Um, and this has been a great show, Tony. I look forward to continuing. Maybe at some point we're creating some dashboards, to
Yeah,
show
yeah, sure.
people. I feel like I'm getting to that point where a lot of these different shows we're coming back because we've covered all of these foundational things, and now it's like, okay, can we put this together in a dashboard? Like, what does this actually look like in
I,
HubSpot?
I, I don't know if we've got another couple of minutes, but that's
Yep.
the only piece, that's the only bit that is different per business. Because your key business issues will be different per business, and therefore the measures that you need to control your key business issues are likely to be different. It's actually much more difficult than you think to say, here is a set of dashboards that is useful across the whole universe. They probably will have some use, but we really need to get into that. And this is why I like SWOT. Other planning tools are available and they're all brilliant. But this is why I like SWOT. It's nice and clean and easy. We come up with those 4 key business issues. That's what we are concentrating on strategically. And that might be different across the board. So the trick to getting this right is that exercise up front. And that's the bit that we're not doing and businesses aren't doing. And that's why we get lost in a sea of sameness. We're all following the same frameworks and playbooks and all this kind of thing. And that adds to the complexity, that adds to the problem. But yes, we should talk about it. We should look at the sorts of things that'll work for people, the sorts of measures that they should be considering.
Yeah. So that sounds like a good episode next week. And until then, dust off the old SWAT. Maybe before you look at it next time, come at it from this angle of this bullseye idea. I love that. Try to get the priorities. It's going to be key. Look for those opportunities within the SWOT assessment itself, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.